Safe on the Lam. Column Short Stories. I Faye Column Fairly. When I began researching my ancestors more than 30 years ago, I thought I knew about history. It is much more enjoyable to learn about history when you can actually read about your ancestors being a big part of it. Before the Mayflower landed in America, many Quakers were forced to hide their beliefs for fear of execution. They hid secretly to worship God. After the success of the Mayflower in 1620, many more Quakers were anxiously awaiting a way to travel to a place of free worship. The King of England was much like the famous, or infamous, King Nebuchadnezzar in history. He also decreed that the people would worship his way, and no other idols or gods would be worshipped in his land. They suffered many years, with many prayers, that God would send them an answer. As with Nebuchadnezzar, God used some of his followers to help the other followers. In England, God called upon William Penn, born in 1644. William Penn was a devout Christian who believed that people should be free to worship as they choose, and not mandated to believe the way the king believed. William Penn was not just an image on our Quaker oat box. He was influential in changing history. During the time the Quakers were creating a new life of freedom in America, the Quakers in the area of England were searching for a way out. The British government became so irate because of the persistent Quakers, that they began arresting the Quakers, and some were executed. William Penn was arrested for numerous law-breaking actions many times. He preached on the street, and held church in private places, supported the Quaker movement, and rebelled against the arrest and execution of the Quakers. He had seen the mistreatment of Quakers all his life, and had heard about the goings-on before his time. He was resolved to change the world. The more William Penn fought to free the Quakers, the harder the king and his government fought to punish the Quakers. I can only imagine what a public sport it became to place the Quakers in bonds for future humiliation, torture, and execution. Each occurrence of mistreatment usually brought forth protests from young William Penn. In turn, his arrest and incarceration were imminent each time. It is possible that the only reason the king did not execute him was the fact that his dad, Admiral Penn, was friends with the king. It is my belief that when a Quaker was executed, William Penn's resolve to change the world grew even stronger. Perhaps William Penn finally reached his breaking point with the king. Perhaps the king was tired of the ongoing battle with young William. Perhaps Admiral Penn had influenced the king to settle the conundrum. For whatever reason, the king allotted William Penn 45,000 acres in America to take these Quakers out of England. The movement would be a large undertaking, but William Penn began collecting the necessary people to expedite the matter. His fleet was made up of 23 ships. Each ship was manned according to young William Penn. Those who could not pay a fare to go were allowed to engage themselves with someone as an indentured servant for a chosen period of time. The way it was done, the servant agreed to work for the person for 1 or more years. In return, that person would gain fare to the new country, and at the end of the agreed time, would receive 50 acres or more of land. One of the Quakers to be hanged for his beliefs was Ralph Cowgill, my 8th great-grandfather. He was married with several children. He and his wife were teaching the children that there is but one God, and to live accordingly. I found digital copies of papers that stated he was hanged in 1682. His obituary reports that he was buried in England in 1681. My theory is that his death might have been the last straw for William Penn. The Penn adventure to America began in 1682. It is my conjecture that William Penn was closely affiliated with my great-grandfather's family. My theory is even more believable because William Penn had a servant who he placed on one of the ships called the Lam with my 8th great-grandfather's widow and children to look after them. The servant, Stephen Sands, eventually married one of the children of the widow Ellen Cowgill, née Stackhouse, and thereby becoming my 7th great-grandfather. One of the children of the widow Cowgill, the namesake of his deceased father, was placed on another of William Penn's ships, called the Friend's Adventure. He had gained fare by becoming a servant of Randall Blackshaw for an agreed term of 4 years. After his term of service was over, young Ralph Cowgill then married Sarah Blackshaw, the daughter of Randall Blackshaw. William Penn wanted to call his new territory Sylvania. After some encouragement, he decided to give his dad credit also, and added Penn to the front of the name. My 7th great-grandparents had 8 children, one of which was Eleanor Sands, my 6th great-grandmother. Eleanor married John Huff. They had 9 children. One of these 9 was Daniel Huff, my 5th great-grandfather. Daniel Huff married Mary Worley. They had 10 children. The youngest was Daniel. He married Elizabeth Christie. They were my 4th great-grandparents. They had 9 children. The youngest of these was Elizabeth Huff. She grew into a magnificent woman and married William Alfred Davis. They were my 3rd great-grandparents, and parents of 15 children. One of these children was my 2nd great-grandfather. His name was James Riley Davis. He married Micah Elizabeth Ray. Out of 7 children, my paternal great-grandmother was the baby. I fondly remember a heavy-set woman sitting in a big rocking chair. I enjoyed listening to her regale us with tales of yesteryear. It's too bad that she didn't know about this story. I can only imagine the color it would have if she expounded on it for hours to a bunch of eager ears. My paternal grandmother, Myrtle, was not so excited about her mom's stories. To my recollection, she didn't get very excited about anything. She was a stern woman who did not partake in any tomfoolery. If I didn't know her lineage already, I would think that she was related to that grumpy old King of England with a powdered wig. And not the pleasant Quakers.